Before we delve into a story about resilience, unexpected kindness, and seeing beyond the surface, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. And tell me in the comments, what's the most challenging part of your daily grind? The waitress, the scar, and the millionaire. The alarm shrieked at 4:30 a.m., a jarring intrusion into the brief, precious hours of sleep. Isabella instinctively reached out to silence it before it could wake her younger siblings, Matteo and Laura, who slept soundly on the other side of the thin apartment wall. She allowed herself just one more instant with her eyes closed, feeling the heavy weight of a weariness that never seemed to fully leave her body. Outside, it was still pitch black, the early morning cold of the city of Viridia seeping through the cracks around the window pane. With a sigh, she pushed herself up. The cement floor was icy beneath her bare feet as she padded towards the tiny bathroom she shared with her mother, Elena, and her siblings. Cold water splashed onto her face from the single tap, a shock that finally chased away the lingering sleep. There was no time for more. She dressed quickly in the uniform of the first of her two jobs. Black pants, a white shirt, and the green apron bearing the logo of City Grind. She pulled her dark hair back into a practical ponytail, applied a thin layer of powder to hide the perpetual dark circles under her eyes, and stepped out of her small room. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee, the rich aroma a small comfort, and set out the breakfast she'd prepared the night before, scrambled eggs that just needed reheating, and some leftover bread from the bakery where she worked weekends. She scribbled a note for Matteo, reminding him of his math test, and left a small amount of cash beside it for Laura to buy supplies for a school project. She left the apartment just as the first hint of dawn began to paint the sky gray. She walked quickly to the bus stop, praying the traffic wouldn't be terrible today. Arriving on time was crucial. She'd received a warning last week when a broken-down bus had made her 15 minutes late. Losing this job was not an option. Not with her mother's operation scheduled for the following month, the mounting medical bills, and school fees to pay for Matteo and Laura. The bus arrived, packed as usual, but she managed to squeeze into a small space for the nearly hour-long journey to the financial district. She used the time to mentally review notes for her university classes. Final exams for her business administration degree were approaching, and good grades required sacrificing sleep to study after her two jobs. At 6:25 a.m., she arrived at the City Grind, 5 minutes before her shift began. She swapped her walking shoes for more comfortable ones kept in her locker and smoothed down her uniform, taking a moment to compose herself. "Morning, Isabella," called Mrs. Rodriguez, the manager, from behind the counter. "Executive section for you today. Mr. Brooks reserved for his 8 a.m. meeting." Isabella nodded, a familiar knot tightening in her stomach. The executive section meant better tips, but it also meant more demanding customers, the wealthy, powerful figures who worked in the gleaming towers outside. Mr. Brooks, in particular, had a reputation for being especially difficult, rarely making eye contact, expecting flawless, invisible service. At 8:05 a.m., Ethan Brooks entered the cafe, flanked by two impeccably dressed foreign executives. Tall, in his early 40s, he wore a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than Isabella's entire wardrobe. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to the world bending to his will. The cafe was located on the ground floor of one of the most luxurious buildings in the area, where Ethan's company, Brooks Capital, occupied the top floors. The view from up there must be incredible, Isabella thought, a world away from the brick wall she saw outside her own window. Ethan took a seat without looking directly at anyone, already absorbed in his conversation, discussing a multi-million-dollar merger in fluent English with his companions. His gold watch glinted as he moved his hands to emphasize a point. He seemed to inhabit a universe completely separate from the young woman who approached their table to take their order. "Good morning. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Isabella asked, her English careful and polished, honed by years of study and necessity. Ethan looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers for a brief instant, a flicker of surprise crossing his face at her perfect accent. "Americano, black, no sugar," he responded, his tone formal, already returning to his conversation. For Ethan, she was just a waitress, a part of the service machinery. For Isabella, he represented an entire world she aspired to access someday, when she finished her degree, if she managed to finish it. What neither of them could have possibly imagined was that, in less than 24 hours, their lives would collide again in a way that would change the course of both, forever. Ethan Brooks exited his meeting feeling satisfied. The merger with the American firm was practically sealed, another conquest to add to Brooks Capital's impeccable record. As he walked towards the private elevator that would whisk him up to his office on the 30th floor, his phone vibrated. "Yes," he answered, not bothering to look at the caller ID, knowing his assistant, Ms. Davies, filtered everything. "Mr. Brooks." Ms. Davies' efficient voice came through the line. "A reminder, sir. You need to pick up your daughter at 1 o'clock today. Mrs. Castillo had a family emergency and won't be able to care for Ava this afternoon." Ethan suppressed a sigh of frustration. Since his wife, Isabel, had passed away 2 years ago, juggling his corporate empire with raising his 9-year-old daughter, Ava, had been a constant, exhausting challenge. Nannies never lasted, school emergencies seemed perpetual, and he felt like he was constantly failing on both the professional and paternal fronts. "Thank you, Ms. Davies. Cancel my afternoon appointments. I'll work from home." He returned to his immense office to gather his things, the panoramic view of Viridia from his floor-to-ceiling window offering a sweeping, detached perspective of the city below. From up here, problems seemed minuscule, manageable. It was a different sensation entirely when he descended to ground level. At 12:45 p.m., his driver waited in the parking garage. Ava's bilingual school was a 20-minute drive away, located in one of the city's more exclusive, leafy suburbs. During the ride, Ethan reviewed emails, mentally prepping for an upcoming negotiation, his mind still firmly in the world of deals and digits. Upon arriving at the school, a line of luxury cars was already queued at the entrance. Mothers in designer clothes chatted amongst themselves, forming small cliques as they waited for their children. Ethan remained in the car, feeling awkward, a constant outsider in this predominantly female environment where he was just the father who usually wasn't there. Ava emerged, a bright spot of color in her school uniform, her pink backpack bouncing against her shoulders. When she saw her father's car, she ran towards it, a radiant smile lighting up her face, a smile that reminded him so achingly of Isabel. It sometimes hurt to look at her, a beautiful, living echo of the woman he had lost. "Daddy!" she exclaimed as she climbed into the back seat. "I didn't know you were picking me up. Mrs. Castillo had an emergency," he explained, softening his tone for her. "I'll be working from home today." Ava's smile faded slightly. She knew what that meant, her father closeted in his study, while she watched TV or did homework alone. "Can we stop for ice cream first?" she asked hopefully, her big eyes wide. Ethan glanced at his watch, his mind already ticking off the minutes until his next call. "I have a call in 20 minutes, princess. Maybe another day." Silence invaded the car. Ava looked out the window, quietly containing her disappointment. Ethan felt a familiar pang of guilt, a dull ache he tried to ignore. It wasn't easy being both parents, especially with the weight of his responsibilities. A few blocks from the school, traffic came to a complete standstill. Horns blared impatiently. "What's going on, Ramon?" Ethan asked his driver. "An accident, sir. Looks like we'll be here a while." Ethan cursed under his breath, glancing nervously at his watch. The call was crucial, and he couldn't take it from the noisy, chaotic car. Is there any place nearby where I could make a quick video call? A cafe, maybe?" "There's a small coffee shop on the next corner, sir," Ramon replied. "Has some tables outside on a patio." "Perfect." Ethan turned to his daughter. "Ava will make a quick stop. I need to make a call." The cafe was modest, nothing like the places Ethan usually frequented, but clean and inviting, with several tables outside under colored umbrellas. "Stay here with Ramon and get whatever you want," he told Ava, handing her some cash. "I'll be back as soon as I finish my call." Ava's shoulders slumped visibly, the hope for ice cream replaced by the familiar reality of being left alone with the driver. Ethan pretended not to notice, his mind already shifting gears to the upcoming negotiation, as he walked away to find a quiet corner. Half an hour later, he finished the call, feeling mentally drained. As he returned to the table outside, he stopped dead. Ava was sitting with a young woman, both laughing, the young woman showing Ava how to fold a paper napkin. "And you fold this corner like this, see?" the young woman was saying, giving the napkin the final touch. "Now you have a tulip. It's beautiful," Ava exclaimed, carefully taking the paper flower. "Can I make one for Daddy?" "Of course," the young woman smiled warmly. "Look, I'll show you again." Ethan walked closer, observing the scene. The young woman looked familiar. It took him a few seconds to place her. The confident posture, the careful English, it was her. The waitress from the City Grind executive section. Isabella. What was she doing here? Did she work 2 jobs? "Daddy, look what Isabella taught me." Ava proudly held up her attempt at a paper flower, less perfect than Isabella's, but equally charming. "It's very beautiful, princess," Ethan replied, genuinely surprised by his daughter's sudden enthusiasm. It had been a long time since he'd seen her so animated, so engaged with something other than a screen. Isabella looked up then, recognizing him instantly. Surprise flashed across her face for just an instant before her professional composure snapped back into place. "Mr. Brooks, what a coincidence," she said with a polite, distant smile. "Did you need to order something else?" "No, thank you. We're just leaving," he replied, his mind momentarily grappling with the unexpected convergence of his 2 worlds. "But, Daddy," Ava protested immediately, her face falling. "Isabella was going to teach me how to make a little boat too." "Another day, Ava. We need to go," Ethan insisted gently, seeing the familiar disappointment cloud his daughter's eyes. Isabella intervened smoothly, her voice soft, directed at Ava. "I can write down the instructions for you if you like," she offered, already reaching for a napkin. "So you can practice at home." Ava's face lit up again with a hopeful smile. As Isabella quickly jotted down instructions on a napkin, Ethan couldn't help but watch her, a question forming in his mind. How could this young woman, who evidently worked tirelessly at 2 different jobs, connect so effortlessly with his daughter, when he, with all his resources, with all his love, still felt like he was constantly failing? The 2 worlds had just collided again, and this time the impact felt significant. The heavy weight of exhaustion was a constant companion. For Isabella, days blurred into a relentless cycle of early alarms, bus rides, double shifts at the City Grind and the Corner Cup, and late nights hunched over textbooks, fueled by cheap coffee and sheer determination. University finals were looming, the pressure mounting, but the academic stress paled in comparison to the ever-present anxiety about money. One Friday afternoon, as Isabella rushed between tables at the City Grind, the lunchtime chaos in full swing, a text message from her mother, Elena, delivered a fresh wave of worry. "The doctor moved up my test. We need 2,000 more pesos for tomorrow. Can you find it?" Isabella's stomach clenched. She'd already taken advances from both jobs this month. 2,000 pesos meant at least 2 extra shifts she didn't have, not when she already worked 7 days a week, juggling work and studying. She arrived at the Corner Cup for her evening shift with the worry weighing heavily on her shoulders, the forced smile feeling thinner than usual. Mrs. Sophia, the owner, a kind, matronly woman, noticed her expression. She asked gently as Isabella tied her apron. "Lucy?" Isabella lied softly, offering a tired, forced smile. "Just a little tired." The shift proceeded as usual until a familiar, bright voice cut through the cafe's low hum. "Isabella!" Ava Brooks, radiating excitement, ran towards her, followed by her father, Ethan, who walked at a slower pace, his expression unreadable as he scanned the room. "Look what I made!" Ava proudly extended a folded napkin, vaguely resembling the little boat Isabella had offered to write instructions for weeks ago. "I practiced every day. It's beautiful, Ava," Isabella said, crouching down to be at the little girl's level, genuinely touched by her persistence and enthusiasm. Ethan observed the scene, a flicker of something akin to curiosity in his eyes. He'd spent days listening to Ava talk about Isabella, the paper flower lady, and her frustrated attempts to recreate the figures. Finally, he had given in to Ava's pleas to return to the small cafe, even though it was further out of his way than he would have liked. "I was wondering if you could teach me something new?" Ava asked shyly, her big eyes filled with hope. Isabella glanced towards Ethan, seeking a silent cue. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "I have my 10-minute break in about half an hour," Isabella replied. "If your dad says it's okay, I could show you how to make a little bird." Ava's eyes lit up like fireworks. "We can stay, right, Daddy? Please." Ethan hesitated. He had a video conference in 2 hours and a mountain of emails to climb. But seeing the sheer, unadulterated hope on his daughter's face, the rare, genuine joy that Isabella seemed to effortlessly bring out in her, something shifted within him. He nodded. "Only for a little while," he conceded. During her break, Isabella joined them at a small table on the patio. With gentle patience, she guided Ava's small hands through the intricate folds and creases, transforming a simple paper napkin into a small bird. Her own hands moved with a practiced dexterity born of years spent making paper figures to entertain Mateo and Laura when there was no money for toys. Ethan watched, fascinated, not just by the skill with which Isabella created something beautiful from nothing, but by the way she interacted with Ava. Patient, attentive, truly interested in her progress, her smile genuine and warm. He hadn't seen Ava laugh and concentrate like this very often since Isabel's death. "Where did you learn to do this?" he asked, breaking his silence, his voice softer than his usual corporate tone. "My grandmother taught me," Isabella replied, without looking up from helping Ava with a difficult fold. "She used to say that a piece of paper can be transformed into anything you can imagine, just like a person." As she spoke, Ethan noticed the faint dark circles under Isabella's eyes, partially disguised by makeup, and her hands young, but with slightly rough edges, the hands of someone who had worked hard, physically, for a long time. "You work in 2 different cafes?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Yes," Isabella confirmed, finishing the bird. "Here in the afternoons, and in the financial district in the mornings." She hesitated, glancing at him before adding quietly, I'm also studying business administration in my spare time." "Business administration," Ethan repeated, genuinely surprised. It was a demanding degree, even for someone with a lighter load. "That's a lot." "It is," she admitted, her smile weary but resolute. "But it's worth the effort. Someday." Their eyes met briefly. For the first time, Ethan truly saw her, not just as the efficient waitress who served him coffee, but as a person, a young woman driven by dreams and determination, carrying a weight he could only begin to imagine. The moment broke when Mrs. Sophia called Isabella back to work. "I'm sorry, I have to get back," she apologized, standing up. "Ava, keep practicing, and next time, you can show me how well it turned out. Okay?" Ava nodded enthusiastically, already absorbed in trying to finish her paper bird. As Isabella walked away, blending back into the rhythm of the cafe, Ethan noticed she had left something on the table, a paper flower, more elaborate than the ones she taught Ava, folded with a delicate skill. "It's for you, Daddy," Ava said, picking it up and handing it to him. "Isabella made it while you were on the phone last time." Ethan held the delicate paper flower, surprised by the unexpected, thoughtful gesture. A simple piece of paper transformed into something beautiful, just as Isabella's grandmother had said. Just like a person. As he watched his daughter happily attempt a new fold, Ethan carefully put the paper flower into the pocket of his suit jacket. A small, fragile reminder of the unexpected connection that had just bloomed in a quiet cafe. He found himself wondering if perhaps they too could somehow be transformed. For days after their second unexpected encounter, Ethan Brooks found his thoughts drifting back to Isabella. He remembered the lines of fatigue around her eyes at the corner cup, starkly contrasting with the determined spark he'd seen when she spoke of her business administration degree. He remembered the quiet strength in her hands as she folded paper into impossible shapes. And he remembered the delicate paper flower she had left for him, a simple, beautiful gesture that resonated more deeply than any calculated corporate gift he'd ever received. More significantly, he couldn't forget the effortless way she had connected with Ava, drawing out his daughter's genuine enthusiasm in a way he struggled to replicate. Ava hadn't stopped talking about the paper bird. Ethan saw a problem. A dedicated, intelligent young woman clearly drowning in hardship, and a lonely daughter who had found a rare, genuine connection. He also had a persistent need for a new administrative assistant. Someone sharp, discreet, and trustworthy. A plan began to form in his mind, a solution that felt both logical and, perhaps, subtly driven by something less easily defined. He decided to offer Isabella a job. Not a handout, but a position that matched her skills and ambition, at a salary that could lift her and her family out of immediate hardship. It was a risk. Their worlds were miles apart, and the power imbalance was immense. But something told him she was worth the risk. The next Monday morning, Isabella arrived at the city grind with her usual tight schedule. She had spent the weekend caring for her mother, Elena, who had suffered dizziness after the recent medical tests, and covering extra shifts at the corner cup to scrape together the additional money her mother's doctor required. As she tied her apron, feeling the familiar ache of exhaustion in her muscles, Maria, one of the older waitresses, sang out, "Someone has an admirer, left something for you in your locker." Intrigued, Isabella opened her locker, expecting perhaps a note from a regular customer or a small gift from a coworker. Instead, she found a crisp white envelope with her name written on it in elegant, unfamiliar calligraphy. Inside, there was a brief note and a check that made her gasp, the paper shaking in her hand. "Dear Ms. Rivera," Isabella's last name, "I would like to extend an invitation for an interview for an administrative intern position at Montero Brooks Capital. This is a half-time role with a flexible schedule, ideal for a student. The initial compensation is detailed in the attached check. If you are interested, please present yourself tomorrow at 9 a.m. at our offices on the 30th floor. Sincerely, Ethan Brooks." The check was for 15,000 pesos as an advance compensation, more than she earned in an entire month working both jobs combined. Her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. "What is it?" Maria asked, peering over her shoulder, curious. "Nothing," Isabella murmured, quickly stuffing the letter and the check into her bag, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Why was Mr. Brooks offering her a job? They had barely exchanged more than a few sentences, primarily about coffee and paper flowers. Was it because of Ava, or did he have other intentions? The thought sent a cold wave of discomfort through her. It wouldn't be the first time a wealthy, powerful man had shown interest in a young woman in her position with motives that were less than professional. The idea unsettled her profoundly. She wasn't like that. She had worked hard, sacrificing time, sleep, and youth to get ahead honestly. Her pride, her independence meant everything. But the money, that money would solve her mother's immediate medical problems. It would pay for the treatments Elena needed. It would give Mateo and Laura what they needed for school. It would be a lifeline, a desperately needed economic relief that felt impossible to refuse. She wrestled with her conscience throughout her shift, the physical fatigue warring with the mental turmoil. By the end of the day, she made a decision. She would go to the interview. She would listen to his offer, and she would make her terms absolutely, unmistakably clear. If she perceived even the slightest hint of an inappropriate implication, of anything beyond a strictly professional arrangement, she would walk out immediately, check or no check. It was a gamble, a terrifying leap into the unknown. But her family's needs, her mother's health, weighed heavier than her fear and suspicion. The next morning, Isabella stood before the towering glass and steel structure that housed Brooks Capital. She had chosen her outfit with meticulous care, a formal pair of black pants, a simple yet elegant white blouse she'd bought on clearance, and her only pair of low-heeled dress shoes. She wanted to look professional, capable, but not presumptuous, not trying to be something she wasn't. Stepping inside, The hushed opulence of the lobby was a world away from the bustling energy of the city grind or the cozy simplicity of the corner cup. Marble floors gleamed, soft lighting highlighted abstract art on the walls, and the air smelled faintly of success and exclusivity. A polite security guard directed her to the elevators. The express elevator whisked her silently up to the 30th floor. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a sleek, modern reception area bathed in natural light. The panoramic view of Viridia from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, a dizzying reminder of how high up she was, both literally and figuratively. A poised receptionist greeted her with a warm, professional smile. "Ms. Rivera? Mr. Brooks is expecting you. Please, come this way." The assistant led her down a quiet corridor to an office. It was immense, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides offering an even more spectacular view. Ethan Brooks was standing by one of the windows, speaking quietly on the phone, a figure of undeniable power against the backdrop of the city. Seeing her enter, he quickly concluded his call. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Rivera," he said formally, his voice carrying the authority she recognized from the diner, but now without the accompanying chaos. He gestured to a comfortable chair placed before his grand desk. "Please have a seat. Can I offer you something to drink?" "No, thank you, Mr. Brooks," Isabella replied, sitting down, her back straight, her hands clasped firmly in her lap to hide their slight trembling. She looked directly at him, deciding to cut straight to the heart of her suspicion. "I appreciate your offer, but I must ask, why me? Why offer this position, with such generous compensation, to a waitress you've only spoken to a few times?" Ethan walked around his desk and sat down, his expression serious, direct. "I'm a straightforward man, Ms. Rivera, so I'll be direct." He met her gaze, and there was something in his eyes that was difficult to interpret. Respect? Admiration? Pure business logic? Perhaps a complex mix. "I observed you, at both your jobs. Your dedication, your work ethic, even under pressure, is exceptional. Your English is excellent. And you are studying a degree that is highly relevant to this position." He paused, then added, his voice softening slightly as he mentioned his daughter. "And yes, Ava hasn't stopped talking about you, which certainly made me pay closer attention." He leaned forward slightly, his tone becoming more focused. "I need an administrative assistant I can trust implicitly. Someone discreet, capable of handling confidential matters, and flexible with unpredictable hours. Your background, your evident responsibility, and your drive suggest you possess these qualities." "And the check?" Isabella pressed, going directly to the financial heart of the matter. "It's an unusually generous amount for an advance." Ethan didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. "That wasn't an advance, Ms. Rivera. It's the monthly salary." He stated it naturally, as if it were a standard figure. "The position requires a high degree of discretion, reliability, and responsibility. I compensate accordingly. I value competence, and I am willing to pay for it." Isabella took a deep breath, trying to process the number, the explanation, and the potential implications. This was her moment to voice her deepest fear. "Mr. Brooks, I must be clear. If this offer, if it has any implications beyond a strictly professional working relationship, I must respectfully decline." Ethan's expression hardened momentarily at the implied suspicion, but then it softened into something akin to understanding, perhaps even a hint of sadness, as if he were used to being viewed through the lens of his wealth and power. "I assure you, Ms. Rivera, my offer is strictly professional." He met her gaze with unwavering seriousness. "I have a very firm personal policy against personal relationships in the workplace. What I am seeking is talent, discretion, and commitment to the job. Nothing more." Something in his tone, in the steady sincerity of his eyes, convinced Isabella. The cold, hard edge of his business persona combined with the quiet honesty she had seen in his interactions with Ava, and the surprising depth of his previous words, felt trustworthy. He wasn't making excuses or vague promises. He was stating facts and policies. She nodded slowly, a wave of relief washing over her, quickly followed by anticipation. "In that case, Mr. Brooks, I am very interested in learning more details about the position. For the next hour, they discussed the specifics, administrative support, managing his schedule, coordinating meetings, handling communications, and occasionally, as she suspected, assisting with logistics related to Ava when his professional commitments demanded it. The proposed hours, 9 to 2, were perfectly compatible with her afternoon university classes, and the salary. The salary would allow her to leave both her demanding cafe jobs, focus on her studies, and ensure her family's financial security and her mother's treatment. Do you have any other questions? Ethan concluded, closing the file. When would you like me to start? Isabella asked, the question confirming her decision to accept. Does next Monday suit you, Ms. Rivera? He replied, a faint, polite smile returning. That would give you time to arrange your departure from your current employments. Isabella nodded, extending her hand across the desk. I'll be here Monday morning, Mr. Brooks. He took her hand in a firm, professional shake. Welcome to the team, Ms. Rivera. I look forward to working with you. Walking out of the imposing building, back onto the busy city street, Isabella felt a dizzying mixture of relief, anxiety, and sheer disbelief. She had just taken a step that would completely change the trajectory of her life. The generous check in her bag wasn't just money. It represented an opportunity she had never dared to believe was possible. What she couldn't know, not yet, was that for Ethan Brooks, this decision also marked a significant turning point, perhaps for reasons he himself wasn't fully ready to comprehend. Isabella's first day at Brooks Capital was a whirlwind of names, faces, and complex procedures. Ms. Davies, Ethan's efficient principal assistant, a woman in her 50s with a calm, capable air, guided her through the labyrinthine corridors of the corporate world with professional kindness. Mr. Brooks is demanding but fair, she explained, showing Isabella the intricate digital filing system. He values punctuality and discretion above all else. Isabella absorbed every detail with a quiet eagerness. This world of glass and steel, so vastly different from the bustling cafes where she had spent her days and nights, represented the future she had aspired to. A future that now, almost miraculously, seemed within her grasp. Her new desk was located in a small anteroom connected to Ethan's main office. From there, she could see the city stretching out below her feet, a constant, breathtaking reminder of how high she had climbed and how quickly things could change. Mid-morning, Ethan emerged from his office, a slight frown etched on his face, reviewing documents. Ms. Rivera, he said without looking up from his papers. I need you to coordinate a video conference with our partners in Monterey for tomorrow. His tone was purely professional, focused. And please, reserve a table for 3 at the Cardinal for lunch on Thursday. Mr. Gonzalez is fond of traditional cuisine. Of course, Mr. Brooks, Isabella responded, taking a mental note, her own professional tone carefully concealing the nerves she felt every time he addressed her directly. The hours flew by. Isabella proved to be a quick study, her sharp mind and dedication immediately apparent. She anticipated Ethan's needs, handled tasks efficiently, and resolved small issues before they escalated. By the time her first day ended, she felt a different kind of exhaustion than she was used to, not the bone-deep physical fatigue of being on her feet for hours, but the mental weariness of constant concentration and operating in a high-stakes environment. Good work today, Ms. Rivera? Ethan said formally from his office doorway as she was gathering her things. That small recognition, a simple acknowledgement of her competence, stayed with her throughout the bus ride to her university classes. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was constantly racing against the clock, barely making it to class on time, her mind still buzzing from work. Days flowed into weeks, and Isabella established a new, sustainable routine. Mornings were spent at the Brooks Capital offices, immersed in the world of finance and administration. Afternoons were dedicated to her university classes, where she could now focus without the crushing weight of exhaustion. Evenings and weekends were for studying and, more importantly, for her family. The generous bi-weekly paycheck fundamentally changed their lives. Her mother, Elena, was able to continue her medical treatment without interruption. Mateo and Laura had the school materials they needed, and the worry that had been a constant, cold presence in their small apartment began to recede. Isabella was still incredibly busy, but it was a manageable busyness, driven by ambition and purpose rather than desperate survival. She was excelling at Brooks Capital, proving her worth not just to Ethan, but to herself. She was keeping up with her studies, seeing her dream of a business administration degree become a tangible reality. And she was able to spend more relaxed, present time with her mother and siblings, sharing meals without rushing to the next shift, helping Matteo with homework without falling asleep. For the first time in years, she could breathe a little easier. The girl who once counted coins to make ends meet was now navigating a world of millions. And while the transition was challenging, she was succeeding. She had proven that her strength and intelligence belonged here, too. Weeks folded into months, and Isabella settled into her new role at Brooks Capital with a quiet competence that impressed everyone, including Ethan. The initial formality between them remained in the office, a necessary shield in the corporate environment, but subtle shifts began to occur. A shared smile that lingered a second too long after discussing a project, a hand that brushed hers inadvertently when passing a document, a brief moment of conversation that veered slightly into personal territory before snapping back to business. They maintained the professional facade, but the space between them was slowly changing, charged with an unspoken awareness. Isabella thrived. The reduced hours, the steady income, the lack of physical exhaustion allowed her to focus on her studies with a clarity she'd never known. Her grades soared. Her mother, Elena, was responding well to treatment, and Matteo and Laura were excelling in school, their needs met without the constant shadow of financial worry. She was building the future she dreamed of, piece by piece. One Friday afternoon, when the office was quieter, most employees having already left for the weekend, the door to Ethan's outer office burst open. "Daddy!" Ava ran in, followed closely by Mrs. Castillo, her nanny. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brooks," Mrs. Castillo apologized, slightly breathless. "She insisted on seeing you before going to her friend's house." Ethan, who had been reviewing documents at his desk, stood up, his corporate demeanor softening instantly as he embraced his daughter. The lines of tension around his eyes eased, replaced by the warmth only Ava seemed to bring out in him. "Isabella!" Ava exclaimed, spotting her in the anteroom. "I didn't know you worked here with Daddy." "Hello, Ava?" Isabella smiled, genuinely happy to see the little girl. "Yes, I work here now. Can you teach me more paper figures?" Ava asked, walking towards Isabella's desk, her eyes shining with hopeful anticipation. "I learned how to make the bird perfectly, Ava." Ethan intervened gently, conscious of the setting and the professional boundaries. "Isabella is working. Maybe another time." Disappointment clouded Ava's face. Isabella glanced at the clock. It was already 5:30, officially the end of her workday. "Actually, Mr. Brooks," she said, turning to Ethan, "I'm finished for today. If you don't mind, I could show Ava a new model before I leave." Ethan hesitated, the professional warring with the paternal. But seeing the hopeful expression on his daughter's face, seeing the genuine warmth in Isabella's eyes when she looked at Ava, he nodded. "All right, Mrs. Castillo, you can go. I'll take Ava to Mariana's later." While the nanny said her goodbyes, Isabella took out some colored paper from her bag. She always carried some now, a habit from entertaining Matteo and Laura. "What would you like to learn today, Ava?" she asked. "A butterfly," Ava replied without hesitation. For the next few minutes, Isabella patiently guided Ava's small hands through the delicate folds, transforming the paper into a small, beautiful butterfly. She was acutely aware of Ethan's gaze, watching them from his office doorway. It was the first time he had seen her interact with Ava for a prolonged period in his world, and he couldn't help but notice the naturalness, the warmth, the easy connection between them. Ava laughed, focused, and beamed with pride at her progress. "Is this right?" Ava asked, holding up her creation. "Perfect," Isabella replied with a warm smile. "You have a real talent for this." Ava turned towards her father, beaming with pride. "Look, Daddy." Ethan took the paper butterfly carefully, examining it with an exaggerated show of seriousness. It's beautiful, princess. We should put it somewhere special at home. Isabella should come over sometime, Ava suggested with the innocent boldness of children, pushing the boundaries further than either adult would dare. She could teach me more figures and see my butterfly collection. An awkward silence followed her words. Isabella felt her cheeks warm, unsure how to navigate this sudden leap from professional to personal. Ava, we shouldn't impose on Ms. Rivera, Ethan said softly, his gaze flicking between Isabella and his daughter, a complex mix of expressions on his face. It wouldn't be an imposition, Isabella heard herself say before her rational mind could stop her. Driven by a sudden desire to nurture the genuine connection she shared with Ava, and perhaps, to see the private world of the man who had changed her life. I'd love to see your collection sometime, Ava. Ava's smile lit up the room, triumphant. See, Daddy? Isabella wants to come. Ethan looked at Isabella, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like he was about to say something significant, something that went beyond the immediate conversation, but the sudden ring of his phone broke the moment. I have to take this, he said, checking the screen. Ava, gather your things. We'll leave as soon as I'm finished. While father and daughter prepared to depart, Isabella organized her desk, acutely aware that she had just crossed an invisible line between the professional and the personal. But looking at the small paper butterfly perched on Ava's desk, she couldn't help but smile. Some lines, perhaps, were meant to be crossed. 3 weeks after Ava's visit to the office, the invitation arrived casually, almost as a side note. Isabella was organizing Ethan's schedule for the upcoming weekend when he mentioned, Ava turns 10 this Saturday. We're having a small celebration at the house. He paused, then added with a formality that belied the personal nature of the request. She specifically asked that her origami teacher attend. Isabella looked up from her tablet, surprised by the formal phrasing for what was clearly Ava's heartfelt wish. I'd love to come, she responded with a genuine smile. If I'm officially invited, of course. For a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of relief in Ethan's usually guarded eyes. Of course. The party starts at 4, he said, handing her a card with the address. It's just a small gathering, mostly family and a few of Ava's close friends. Isabella nodded, taking the card. The address indicated one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, an area of sprawling mansions and manicured gardens. She hadn't expected less. On Saturday, after much deliberation about what to wear, wanting to be appropriate but still herself, she opted for a simple, elegant turquoise dress and low sandals. She bought a gift that represented a significant sacrifice but felt meaningful. A beautiful book on advanced origami techniques and special imported paper. She wanted it to be a gift of passion, not just obligation. The Brooks mansion was a modern architectural marvel of clean lines and vast glass expanses, nestled within impeccable gardens. Isabella felt a pang of intimidation as the taxi pulled away, leaving her standing alone before the massive entrance gate. Taking a deep breath, she rang the bell. A kind housekeeper welcomed her and led her through a stunning foyer and living area towards the back garden, where the celebration was already underway. The space was transformed, colored balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze. Strings of fairy lights were draped through trees, and a long table was laden with a feast fit for a banquet. Isabella! Ava's enthusiastic voice located her before she could even fully orient herself. The birthday girl, looking radiant in a pink dress and a birthday crown, ran towards her. You came! Happy birthday, Ava! Isabella smiled, crouching down to hug her and present the gift. I hope you like it. Ava eagerly tore open the wrapping. Her eyes widened with genuine awe as she saw the contents. Wow, this is incredible. Look, Daddy, real Japanese paper. Only then did Isabella notice Ethan approaching. He was dressed in jeans and a casual shirt, looking younger, more relaxed, a stark contrast to the tailored suits she was used to seeing in the office. A very thoughtful gift, Isabella, he commented, his gaze on her holding something akin to gratitude, or perhaps admiration. Ava has practically turned her room into a paper workshop since she met you. I'm glad she likes it, Isabella replied, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. suddenly acutely aware of the curious eyes of other guests beginning to subtly focus on them. "Come, I want to introduce you," Ethan said, guiding her towards a small group of adults. Over the next hour, Isabella met Ethan's sister, Sophia, her husband, and several family friends. All were polite, but their educated curiosity was palpable, clearly intrigued by her presence. "So, you're the famous Isabella," Sophia commented with a knowing smile when they had a moment alone. "Ava talks about you non-stop. She's a wonderful girl," Isabella replied sincerely. "And very astute," Sophia added, her gaze shrewd. "I haven't seen my brother so attentive to anyone since Isabel died." Before Isabella could fully process that loaded statement, Ava reappeared to drag her towards a table where several girls were waiting, eager to learn paper folding. For the next half hour, Isabella led an impromptu origami workshop that was the undeniable hit of the party. Amidst the laughter and rustling paper, she was aware of Ethan's gaze, following her from across the garden. Every time their eyes met, he would quickly look away, almost as if he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. When it was time to cut the cake, the girls swarmed around Ava. Isabella took the opportunity to slip away towards a quiet corner of the garden, needing a moment to process the surreal situation. A luxurious party, surrounded by people whose lives were immeasurably different from hers, navigating unspoken expectations and veiled curiosity. "Hiding!" Ethan's voice startled her. He had approached without her noticing, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Just getting some air," she replied, accepting the glass he offered. "It's a beautiful party, Ethan." Ava's clearly having the best time. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, contemplating the garden illuminated by soft string lights, the distant murmur of the party a gentle backdrop. There was something intimate in that quiet space, something that made Isabella's heart beat a little faster. "Isabella?" Ethan began, his voice suddenly serious, shifting from casual conversation to something more weighty. "There's something I need to tell you. Something has changed. Since you started working with me, I've noticed things. In Ava, in the office, in myself." Isabella held her breath, unsure how to respond, her mind racing with possibilities. "I know this is inappropriate," he continued, acknowledging the obvious conflict. "You're my employee. There's a difference in age. Our lives are worlds apart." He took a small step closer, his gaze intense, vulnerable. "But I can't help feeling that, Daddy." Ava's voice, clear and bright, cut through his confession. "It's time to open presents." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment, visibly trying to regain his composure. The intimate, vulnerable moment shattered by the happy demands of the party. "Coming, princess," he called back. When Ava had moved away, the charged atmosphere between them remained, thick with unspoken words and interrupted confessions. Ethan seemed almost regretful, as if he had said too much, revealed too much. We should get back to the party," he said, his voice regaining its formal tone, pulling back from the edge of vulnerability. Isabella nodded, confused by the strange mixture of relief and disappointment swirling within her. As they walked back towards the main group, their hands brushed accidentally. Neither pulled away immediately, a small, electric contact holding them together for a brief second before they moved apart. That night, back in her small apartment, listening to the quiet breathing of her sleeping siblings, Isabella lay awake contemplating the ceiling in the darkness. Alejandro's words, cut short and unfinished, echoed in her mind, alongside the silent warning she had repeated to herself since the first day. Don't hope, don't get involved, don't cross that line. But perhaps, she thought, just before sleep finally claimed her, some lines were simply destined to be crossed.
Ok, tôi sẽ tiếp tục ngay với phần 9, nơi một sự kiện bất ngờ xảy ra và thay đổi cục diện.
The Monday following Ava's birthday party arrived with a knot of anticipation in Isabella's stomach. She didn't know how to face Ethan after their interrupted conversation in the garden. Would they pretend it never happened? Would he finish what he had started to say? To her surprise, She found a message from Ms. Davies informing her that Mr. Brooks had traveled urgently to Monterey for business and wouldn't return until Wednesday. A mix of relief and disappointment washed over her. Relief from the immediate awkwardness. Disappointment that the moment remained unfinished. She sat down to organize the pending correspondence, the memory of his near confession lingering. Mid-morning, she received an unexpected call. "Ms. Rivera?" A voice introduced itself. "This is Professor Martinez from Montessori School. We have Ava Brooks here in the infirmary. She's running a fever. We've tried to contact her father, but he seems to be unreachable." Isabella's heart leaped into her throat. "Is she all right? Is it serious?" "It doesn't appear to be serious, but she's uncomfortable and needs to go home. Mrs. Castillo informed us she's out of town for a family emergency." "I understand," Isabella replied, a decision forming instantly in her mind, pushing aside any thought of professional boundaries or inconvenience. "I'll go get her. Please tell her I'm on my way." After quickly informing Ms. Davies of the situation, explaining that Mr. Brooks was unreachable and she would handle it, Isabella hailed a taxi towards the exclusive neighborhood where Ava's school was located. Throughout the ride, she tried calling Ethan's cell phone, sending messages, but they went unanswered. He was likely in a crucial meeting. Phone off. Ava was pale and drowsy when Isabella arrived at the school infirmary. Seeing Isabella, the little girl immediately reached out, her vulnerability making her seem much younger than 10. "My head hurts," she murmured as Isabella signed the release forms. "I'll take you home, mi amor," Isabella assured her gently, using a term of endearment she reserved for Mateo and Laura, her hand instinctively going to Ava's forehead, which felt warm. "And I'll take care of you until your dad can get here." In the taxi back to the mansion, Ava snuggled against her, seeking comfort, her small body warm with fever. Isabella felt an immense tenderness mixed with worry. She knew she was overstepping her bounds, bringing Ava back to the mansion without Ethan's explicit authorization, entering his private sanctuary in this unplanned, intimate capacity. The mansion felt vast and silent when they arrived. The housekeeper, surprised but efficient, welcomed them, having been notified by the school that someone was coming to pick up Ava. "I'll take her to her room," Isabella said, her voice regaining its usual steady tone, taking charge naturally. "Could we get a thermometer and some fresh water?" Ava's bedroom was exactly as Isabella had imagined, spacious, filled with books and toys, with a large collection of butterflies of all materials imaginable. In a corner, dozens of paper figures hung from strings, including all the ones they had made together. She helped Ava change into her pajamas and tucked her into bed. The thermometer read 38.5 degrees Celsius. "Does anything else hurt besides your head?" Isabella asked, gently placing a cool, damp cloth on Ava's forehead. "My throat," Ava whispered weakly. "Are you gonna stay with me?" "Of course, mi amor. Until your dad gets back." Ava smiled weakly before closing her eyes, already drifting off to sleep. "I wish you could stay always," she murmured, the simple words hanging in the quiet room, heavy with unexpected meaning. Those words resonated deeply within Isabella as she sat beside the bed, monitoring Ava's temperature, sending periodic messages to Ethan's inaccessible phone, updating him on the situation. Finally, near 4 in the afternoon, her phone rang. "Rosario." Ethan's voice on the other end was tense, laced with worry, relief flooding it as soon as she answered. "I just saw your messages. I was in a meeting. How is Ava?" "Better," Isabella replied softly, keeping her voice low not to wake the sleeping child. "The fever's gone down to 37.8. She's been sleeping most of the time. Thank God." There was a pause before he added, the relief evident in his voice. "I'm taking the first flight available. I'll get there tonight." Another pause, then, "Thank you, Isabella, for being there, for taking care of her." "You don't have to thank me, Mr. Brooks." "Yes," he insisted, his voice thick with an emotion he rarely let surface. "Yes, I do. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there." When they hung up, Isabella remained by Ava's bedside, reflecting on the strange, rapid turn of events. In just a few months, she had gone from being an exhausted waitress juggling two demanding jobs to someone important enough to be called in a family emergency for the powerful Mr. Brooks and his daughter. At 8 o'clock that night, the fever had vanished completely. Ava had woken long enough to have some soup and juice before falling back asleep. Isabella was reading a book in the armchair by the window when she heard the front door open downstairs. Hurried footsteps ascended the grand staircase, and seconds later, Ethan appeared in the doorway of Ava's room. He looked like a man who had spent hours in anxious travel, his tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled, eyes tired but alert, his focus solely on the small figure in the bed. "How is she?" he asked in a whisper, approaching the bed cautiously. "Much better. The fever's gone," Isabella replied, getting up from the chair. "The doctor who checked her said it's just a virus. She needs rest and fluids." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, gently stroking his daughter's hair, the relief visible in every line of his face, every relaxed muscle. I should go," Isabella murmured, collecting her bag. "It's late." "No," Ethan said, looking up, his gaze meeting hers, holding a depth she hadn't seen before. "Please, stay for a moment. I need to talk to you, properly." He led her out of the room, leaving the door ajar so they could hear Ava if she woke. In the hallway, under the soft, indirect light, Ethan seemed to struggle with his words, searching for how to begin. "What happened today?" he started, his voice a little rough. "Anyone would have done the same, Mr. Brooks?" Isabella interrupted, suddenly uncomfortable, trying to deflect the conversation back to a neutral zone. "No, Isabella," he insisted, taking a step towards her, shortening the distance between them, his earlier hesitation gone, replaced by a quiet, powerful resolve. "Not everyone would have dropped everything, driven across the city, walked into my home and taken care of my daughter like that. Not anyone." His gaze was intense, earnest, picking up exactly where their conversation in the garden had left off. "What I wanted to tell you the other day, at the party, before we were interrupted, is that you've changed our lives, Isabella. You've made them better, brighter, and today you proved it again, in a way that matters more than anything." He took another step closer, the space between them vanishing. "I know this complicates everything, our working relationship, our very different circumstances." He looked into her eyes, his own filled with vulnerability and a profound truth. "But I can't keep pretending that you're just my assistant anymore." Isabella held her breath, her heart pounding so fiercely in her chest she feared he could hear it. The silent warning she'd carried for months warred with the undeniable reality of the moment, with the depth of feeling she saw in his eyes. "Me neither," she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper, raw with emotion. "But I'm scared of what that means." Ethan extended his hand, and with infinite tenderness, he reached out and gently brushed his fingers against Isabella's cheek, near the edge of her scar. "It means," he murmured, his voice low, filled with hope and uncertainty, "that we should find out, together." The answer hung suspended between them, a fragile possibility, when a small sound from Ava's room broke the spell. A sigh, a rustle of sheets. The intimate moment shattered, but something irrevocable had shifted between them. "We'll talk tomorrow," Ethan said, letting his hand fall, the practicality of being a parent overriding the burgeoning romantic tension. "My driver will take you home." As the luxurious car glided through the city's night streets, Isabella gazed at the lights through the window, her mind a whirlwind. How quickly life could change. How much she had already changed. Fear and hope intertwined in her chest, a complex, unfamiliar feeling, as she wondered what tomorrow would bring. In the weeks that followed the night Ava was sick, something subtle but profound shifted in the dynamic between Isabella and Ethan. The formal boundaries of Brooks' capital remained, a necessary facade for curious eyes, but beneath the surface, an undeniable connection grew. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic gestures, just small moments building something new. a hand that lingered a second too long when passing documents, glances that held a depth beyond professional courtesy, quiet conversations that stretched just past the edges of work, hinting at shared thoughts and feelings. Ethan had stopped pretending Isabella was just his assistant, and Isabella had stopped pretending she was immune to the quiet strength, the unexpected kindness, and the undeniable vulnerability she saw in him, especially concerning Ava. On Fridays, a new ritual began. Instead of rushing home, Ethan started inviting Isabella to dinner with him and Ava. What began as a hesitant suggestion grew into a cherished tradition they all looked forward to. "Can I sit next to Isabella?" Ava would ask without fail, her bright smile a testament to her complete acceptance of Isabella. For the little girl, the relationship felt natural and necessary, as if Isabella was simply occupying a space that had been waiting for her. They cooked together sometimes in the sprawling, rarely used kitchen at the mansion. Other times they explored small, authentic restaurants Isabella knew from her days as a waitress, bridging their worlds with shared meals and easy conversation. "Remember the first time we really talked?" Ethan asked one afternoon as they walked through the park, watching Ava feed the ducks by the lake. "At the corner cup?" Isabella smiled, remembering the paper flower and his surprise at her studying business admin. "No," he chuckled, taking her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I mean really talked. In the diner. After those men. I called you strong. And I thought you saw a flaw," she replied, squeezing his hand. "We both had a lot to learn about seeing, didn't we? Not everything was easy." There were whispers in the company, raised eyebrows from some of Ethan's social circle. Even his sister, Sophia, had initially expressed concerns about Isabella's true intentions. But the quiet constancy of their affection, the undeniable happiness of Ava, slowly began to silence most critics. Even Sophia, initially skeptical, now included Isabella in family gatherings and treated her with a growing, if not entirely warm, respect. One Tuesday morning, while reviewing the weekly agenda, Ethan made an unexpected proposal. "I have to travel to Los Cabos this weekend for an important project," he mentioned, his tone seemingly casual. "Ava will be coming with me." He paused, his gaze meeting hers, a clear invitation in his eyes. "I was wondering if you'd like to join us." Isabella looked up from her tablet, surprised by the directness of the invitation, sensing the weight behind the seemingly simple request. "Join you?" she asked, her voice a little breathless. "As my assistant, of course," Ethan added quickly, maintaining the professional pretense, though the warmth in his eyes belied the words. "There are some meetings I need you to cover, prepare materials for, but you'd also have free time." Ava would be thrilled. Isabella knew she should decline. A weekend away together, far from the city, represented crossing a line they had carefully respected, a leap from tentative steps to something much more significant. It was risky, but before her rational mind could form a refusal, she heard herself saying, I'd love to." Friday afternoon found the three of them boarding Ethan's private company jet. Ava was exultant, bouncing in her seat, excitedly explaining everything they would do. Swimming with dolphins, boat rides, building sandcastles. "And you can stay in the room right next to mine," the little girl exclaimed to Isabella. "It's like a sleepover, but better." Isabella looked at Ethan, who watched the scene with a quiet, content smile. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen before, a kind of peace, a sense that something fractured was finally beginning to align. The resort was spectacular, with private villas facing the ocean. Isabella had never been anywhere like it. Her room, connected to Ethan's main suite by a shared terrace, was larger than her entire apartment. "Do you like it?" Ava asked, insisting on giving her an official tour. "It's beautiful, mi amor," Isabella replied, stroking the little girl's hair. "Thank you for inviting me on your adventure." "It was Daddy's idea," Ava confessed with a complicit smile. "He's been much happier since you work with him. He smiles more." That night, they had dinner on the terrace, under the vast canopy of stars and the gentle murmur of the waves. Ava fell asleep early, exhausted by the excitement of the day. When Ethan returned from tucking her in, he found Isabella contemplating the dark ocean, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her, his voice low and quiet in the night. "How unreal this all seems," she replied honestly, gesturing to the luxurious setting around them. "A few months ago I was serving coffee and counting coins to make ends meet, and now I'm here, in a place I'd only ever seen in magazines." Ethan nodded, understanding the dizzying speed of the change, the contrast she felt so acutely. "Sometimes I wonder if this is fair to you, Isabella," he said quietly, voicing a long-held concern. "I'm older than you, I have a daughter, my life is complicated. Maybe it's too much." Isabella turned to look at him directly, her gaze steady, determined. "Do you think I care about that, Ethan? I've worked my entire life. I faced more difficulties than you can imagine. I'm not afraid of complicated." "What are you afraid of then?" he asked, leaning imperceptibly closer, his gaze searching hers. "Losing myself," Isabella confessed, the fear she'd voiced after the gossip article still present, though quieter now. "Becoming someone I don't recognize. Being dazzled by all of this." She made a gesture encompassing the luxurious surroundings. Ethan took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers, a warm, steady connection. "The woman I met making paper figures with my daughter in a modest cafe is the same woman sitting here now," he said firmly, his thumb gently stroking her hand. "It's that woman who matters to me, Isabella. Not where we are, not what's around us." Under the soft, silver light of the moon, with the rhythmic sound of the sea as their only witness, Ethan leaned slowly towards her. This time, there were no interruptions, no phone calls, no little voices demanding attention. Their lips met in a kiss, soft, tentative at first, then deepening, becoming more sure, carrying the weight of unspoken feelings, of shared vulnerabilities, of a connection forged in unexpected circumstances. Isabella's hands rose to cup his face, her touch gentle, while Ethan pulled her closer, the world outside the terrace vanishing. When they finally separated, they remained with their foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air, acutely aware that they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. "What happens now?" Isabella whispered, her voice raw with emotion and newfound hope. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, his own voice thick. "Only that I want to find out. With you." The rest of the weekend unfolded like a dream. During the day, they were almost a family, building sandcastles with Ava, swimming in the clear water, discovering the small treasures the beach offered. By night, after tucking Ava into bed, they would meet on the terrace, talking for hours, getting to know each other not as boss and assistant, not as figures from different worlds, but simply as a man and a woman, discovering how much they had in common despite their vastly different lives. Sunday afternoon, as they packed to return to the city, Ava appeared in Isabella's room holding a small box of seashells. "I collected them for you," she said, giving her the small treasure. "So you remember our first trip together." "First trip?" Isabella asked, touched by the simple gift and the innocent phrasing. Ava nodded with absolute certainty. "Of course. There will be lots more, right?" The question hung in the air, charged with hope and expectation, directed at both of them. Before Isabella could answer, Ethan appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with an unreadable expression. "Right, Daddy?" Ava insisted, turning to him. "Isabella will come on our next trips too." Ethan walked across the room, and in a gesture that surprised both of them, he took Isabella's hand in his, holding it firmly. "If she wants to," he responded, looking directly into Isabella's eyes, a promise shining there. "This will be just the first of many." In that moment, under Ava's hopeful gaze and the silent promise in Ethan's eyes, Isabella felt that she had finally found her place, not in the material luxury that surrounded them, but in the warm, shared space between two hearts that had opened up room for her. 6 months unfolded after that first, unforgettable trip to Los Cabos. Isabella's life had changed in ways she could never have imagined, settling into a rhythm that felt both surreal and profoundly real. She no longer lived in the cramped apartment she shared with her mother and siblings. Ethan had helped her find a small, elegant apartment closer to her university. A space that was hers, a quiet sanctuary where she could focus on her studies and her burgeoning relationship. Her mother, Elena, had successfully completed her treatment. Her health significantly improved. Mateo and Laura were thriving in better schools. Their fees no longer a distant, impossible dream thanks to scholarships Ethan had quietly helped facilitate. Money was no longer a constant, suffocating worry, but Isabella remained fundamentally the same, grounded, hardworking, determined. As her final year of university progressed, she made a deliberate choice. To avoid any potential conflict of interest and to stand fully on her own merit, she transitioned from being Ethan's administrative assistant. Instead, leveraging her growing degree and passion for helping others, she began working in the corporate social responsibility department at Brooks Capital, developing programs for underprivileged youth. It was a job that allowed her to give back, using her knowledge and experience to create opportunities for others, a way to honor where she came from while building where she was going. Ethan had changed too. He was no longer the cold, distant executive who lived solely for work. Isabella and Ava had chipped away at his carefully constructed walls, revealing the man underneath. He left the office at reasonable hours, attended Ava's school events, and even attempted origami himself sometimes, always joking that his hands were made for signing contracts, not folding paper. The Brooks mansion, once formal and often silent, now frequently echoed with laughter. Friday dinners had become a sacred tradition for the three of them, sometimes cooking together in the sprawling kitchen, other times venturing out to small restaurants Isabella knew, sharing stories and bridging their different worlds with ease. "Remember the first time we met?" Ethan asked one afternoon as they walked through the park, watching Ava feed the ducks by the lake. "At the city grind?" Isabella smiled, the memory vivid. "Americano, black, no sugar. You didn't even look at me directly. I was too busy being important," he admitted, taking her hand, his thumb gently stroking hers. "How blind I was. And I was too busy surviving," she added, squeezing his hand, a quiet acknowledgement of their separate journeys. "We both had a lot to learn. Not everything was smooth sailing. There were whispers in the company as their relationship became more openly acknowledged, subtle looks of disapproval from some of Ethan's older, more traditional friends, and even his sister, Sophia, had initially voiced concerns, questioning Isabella's true intentions. But over time, the undeniable constancy of their love, the visible, genuine happiness of Ava, had slowly silenced most critics. Even Sophia, initially skeptical, now included Isabella warmly in family gatherings and treated her with growing respect, acknowledging the positive change she saw in her brother and niece. Ava, at 10 years old, navigated the changing dynamics with a child's clear-sighted acceptance. Isabella wasn't just daddy's friend anymore. She was a consistent, loving presence in her life, a source of comfort, laughter, and quiet wisdom. She helped with homework, braided her hair, listened to her worries, and celebrated her triumphs. Isabella had, without either adult explicitly stating it, seamlessly stepped into a role that had been vacant for too long. One evening, as Isabella helped Ava with her science homework, the little girl paused, her pencil still, and asked a question that took Isabella by surprise. A question delivered with the simple, direct sincerity of a child who felt safe enough to voice her deepest wish. "Isabella, do you want to be my mom?" The pencil stopped mid-stroke on the paper. Isabella's heart leaped into her throat, tears stinging her eyes instantly. She looked into those innocent eyes, wide with hope and earnest expectation, unsure how to answer, how to articulate the depth of feeling that question stirred within her. "Ava, she began, her voice thick with emotion, searching for the right words. "Because I want you to be," the little girl continued, her voice gaining confidence, her hand reaching out to take Isabella's. "Daddy's happier with you. I'm happier with you. And I think you're happy with us too." Isabella couldn't speak. She pulled Ava into a fierce, tender hug, holding her close, tears streaming down her face now, tears of overwhelming love, gratitude, and profound emotion. This little girl, this unexpected light in her life, was asking her to step into the most important role of all. Mi amor, Isabella whispered, her voice choked with emotion. It would be an honor to be your mom, Ava. I love you like you are my own daughter. What neither of them knew was that Ethan was standing in the doorway, having just arrived home, listening to the entire conversation. His heart overflowing with an emotion he believed he had lost forever. Ethan Brooks stood frozen in the doorway, witnessing the raw, beautiful exchange between his daughter, Ava, and Isabella. His heart, which he had believed was permanently fractured after Isabel's death, felt like it was overflowing, expanding to encompass the immense love, gratitude, and profound rightness of the moment. He saw Ava's deepest wish spoken aloud, and Isabella's unconditional, loving acceptance. He saw the family he hadn't dared to fully hope for, forming right before his eyes. That night, when Ava was sleeping soundly, and the mansion settled into quiet, Ethan found Isabella on the terrace, contemplating the city lights, lost in her own emotions. He walked towards her, his presence a quiet anchor in the night. Ava asked if you wanted to be her mom, he said softly, his voice a little rough with the emotion that was swelling in his chest, acknowledging that he had overheard. Isabella didn't turn, sensing his presence, hearing the depth in his tone. And what did you tell her? She asked quietly, her voice still thick with the emotion from her conversation with Ava. I told her the truth, Ethan replied, walking up beside her. That I love you. That I've come alive again because of you. He took her hands, gently turning her to face him, his gaze unwavering, filled with love and a future she had barely dared to imagine. Isabella Rivera, you walked into our lives like a much-needed breath of fresh air, when we didn't even realize we were suffocating. Ava adores you. He paused, searching for the words that felt big enough to encompass the change she had wrought. And I have learned what it means to truly live again, thanks to you. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. We don't need a grand ceremony or expensive rings, not if you don't want them, he said, his voice tender, reflecting his understanding of what truly mattered to her. But I do need you to know. This is your home now, Isabella. We are your family. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant silver band. No diamonds, nothing flashy. Just a word engraved on the inside. And we want it to be forever. Isabella looked at the ring, then back at him, tears blurring her vision. It was beautiful in its simplicity, a quiet testament to the man he was, the man he had become. She saw the word engraved inside, whole. He had chosen it not for the billionaire but for her, for them. You chose it thinking of me? She whispered, recognizing his thoughtfulness, his deep understanding. Always thinking of you, he responded simply, his thumbs gently stroking her hands. Under the starry sky of Viridia, with the promise of a future together hanging in the air, he leaned in. This time, there were no interruptions. Their lips met in a kiss that sealed promises, healed old wounds, and spoke of a future they would build together. They kissed not as the powerful executive and the struggling young woman they once were, but as two souls who had found in the other exactly what they needed to finally be complete. There were no grand declarations or elaborate vows needed in that moment. True love, they had learned, wasn't built with spectacular moments or grand gestures, but with the quiet consistency of everyday kindness, shared vulnerabilities, the willingness to see each other exactly as they were, and the unwavering choice to love them for it. In that silent, heartfelt agreement to cherish and care for one another, they had found the most authentic form of happiness. Years later, morning light streamed gently through the large windows of a small bakery, painting the tiled floor with soft, golden hues. The sign above the entrance, hand-painted with care, read, "Scarlet and Kindness." Its letters warm and welcoming. Beneath it, a quieter message, where every story matters. Inside, the comforting scent of cinnamon and vanilla lingered in the air. Loaves of fresh bread cooled on wooden racks. Raspberry tarts glistened behind glass. The atmosphere felt less like a shop and more like a hug. A place created from pain transformed by love. A place designed for connection and acceptance. Scarlet, for the color of the fiery wreckage and the mark it left, now blended with the kindness that had healed it. Isabella moved behind the counter, tying her apron with practiced ease, her long braid resting over her shoulder. The scar along her left cheek, once a source of deep pain and shame, was now simply a part of her face. A line in her story she no longer felt the need to conceal, but rather carried with quiet strength. Customers filtered in, drawn by the aroma and the gentle energy. Many came for the pastries, but stayed for the warmth, the understanding smiles, the quiet sense of belonging. A small jar by the register held a note. Pay it forward, for someone still finding their way. At the back of the bakery, near a sun-warmed window, Ethan sat with a cup of tea and a notebook, his expression peaceful. He had helped Isabella open the shop her dream, brought to life not with his raw wealth, but with shared purpose and quiet investment. This was her space, her healing made tangible. He was simply grateful to witness it bloom. Ava, now a teenager, might be helping with baking, or Mateo and Laura might be studying at a table their family unit expanded, interwoven. One ordinary afternoon, the front door creaked open, a familiar sound in the quiet shop. A young girl stood there, hoodie pulled low, hands tucked deep in her pockets, her body radiating nervousness. A large, noticeable birthmark covered her chin and lower cheek. Her eyes flickered towards Isabella, then down at the help-wanted sign taped to the glass. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "I was wondering if you'd ever hire someone like me." Isabella stepped forward slowly, her smile warm, calm, and utterly understanding. She wiped her hands on her apron and knelt just enough to meet the girl's eyes, offering a quiet, unwavering gaze that saw not a birthmark, but a person seeking a chance, seeking acceptance. "In this place," Isabella said gently, her voice steady, filled with the wisdom of her own journey, "we don't hire perfect, we welcome real." She paused, her gaze softening further, her hand reaching up to lightly tap her own scar with a wink, a shared acknowledgement of visible differences. "And real," she added, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "Real is always, always beautiful." The girl blinked, the tension in her shoulders easing, a slow, tentative smile spreading across her face, transforming her features with a light that reached her eyes. Outside, the city rushed forward, impatient, loud, often unforgiving. But inside Scarlet and Kindness, time moved differently. Here, scars were honored, stories were safe, and love wasn't a distant fairy tale. It was in the scent of bread baking, in the warm hands reaching across the counter, and in a place where healing, belonging, and acceptance began, one sweet, imperfect morning at a time. And that's the story of Isabella and Ethan, a journey from hardship and hidden pain to unexpected love, profound acceptance, and building a life where every story matters. It's a reminder that our scars aren't flaws, but parts of our unique strength, and that the most beautiful connections are found when we dare to see and be seen, just as we are. If this story touched your heart, made you tear up, or simply reminded you of the power of kindness and acceptance, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment your favorite part below. Don't forget to subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more unforgettable tales of love, resilience, and finding belonging in unexpected places. Thank you for being part of our community. We'll see you in the next one for another story that touches the heart.